lonely rancher found an Apache slave in the desert, didn't know she would stay with him forever. Thomas had always been a quiet man. He had never married and his family was gone long ago. Days passed slowly, filled with hard work, tending cattle, repairing fences, and making sure the small crops he managed could survive the harsh desert climate. Despite the endless tasks, loneliness was a constant companion. At night, he would sit outside, looking at the stars, thinking about how empty his life had become. One summer day, the heat was especially strong. Thomas had been walking along the distant edge of his ranch, checking the fences that bordered the desert. His boots sank slightly into the hot sand with every step, and sweat ran down his forehead. The sun beat down mercilessly, and even the cattle seemed to move slower in the heat. As he walked, something unusual caught his eye. A small figure appeared on the horizon, moving slowly, struggling against the desert wind. At first, Thomas thought it might be a lost traveler, but as he got closer, he realized it was something else, someone in trouble. The closer Thomas came, the clearer it became. A young woman, thin and weary, staggered across the sand. Her clothing was tattered and her bare feet left small prints behind her. She looked exhausted and her eyes held a mix of fear and desperation. Thomas felt a sudden surge of concern. He approached carefully, not wanting to scare her. "Hey there. Are you okay?" he called, his voice gentle but firm. She stopped, turned toward him, and took a hesitant step back. Her eyes were wide, wary, and filled with uncertainty. Thomas held out a hand, offering water from the canteen he carried. She stared at it for a moment, her throat dry and trembling. Finally, she took it, drinking slowly, her hands shaking as they held the metal cup. The sun continued to blaze overhead, but for a moment there was only silence between them, the sound of the wind, the faint rustle of desert plants, and her shallow breaths. He realized that she was not just a lost traveler. Her eyes told a story of hardship, of being chased or forced to flee, but the details were hidden behind her cautious expression. She was alone, and she needed help. Without pushing, Thomas gently guided her toward the small cabin near his ranch. It was modest, with a simple wooden door and a tiny porch. Inside, he offered her food, a little bread and dried meat, and a place to rest. She accepted hesitantly, moving slowly as if unsure whether this was safe. Thomas watched her carefully, noting the tension in her shoulders, the way she flinched at sudden movements. Trust was not easily given, and he understood that. "You don't have to talk if you don't want to," he said softly, trying to make her feel comfortable. She nodded slightly, her eyes meeting his for a fleeting moment before she looked away. Over the next few days, Thomas learned more about her, though communication was difficult. She spoke only her native Apache language and he spoke English. At first, they relied on gestures, drawings in the sand, and simple signs to understand each other. She would point to water, food, or her aching feet. Thomas tried to teach her a few English words, and she repeated them carefully, her voice quiet but determined. It was a slow process, filled with small victories, like the first time she managed to ask for water without needing to point. Each moment built a fragile bridge between them, connecting two very different lives through patience and understanding. As they spent more time together, Thomas began to notice her strength. Despite her exhaustion, she carried herself with dignity and resilience. She was careful with everything she did, from gathering firewood to helping clean the cabin. Her eyes, though wary, showed intelligence and courage. Thomas found himself admiring her quietly. She reminded him of something he had long forgotten, the ability to survive, to endure, and to hope even in the most difficult circumstances. She was a living spirit of the desert, as much a part of it as the sun and the sand. One afternoon, while they were sitting outside under the shade of a lone tree, Thomas asked her name. She hesitated, then pointed to herself and said a word he could not understand. He nodded, accepting it, and repeated it as best he could. From that moment he called her Nea, a name he chose because it sounded soft and strong at the same time. She allowed it, her eyes flicking toward him with a hint of recognition. It was a small step, but it marked the beginning of their growing connection. Days turned into weeks, and life at the ranch slowly adapted to include Naya. She helped with chores in her quiet way, feeding chickens, mending fences, and even learning to ride a horse with Thomas's guidance. The work was hard, but together they managed it. Thomas began to feel a sense of companionship he had never known. It was not just about helping each other survive. It was about sharing moments, small victories, and the rhythm of daily life. They were learning each other's habits, understanding each other's moods, and beginning to rely on one another in ways that words could not express. Despite the growing bond, there were moments of tension and fear. Naya would sometimes flinch at sudden noises or hide when strangers approached the ranch. Thomas understood that her past was filled with danger, and he never pushed her to speak about it. He respected her silence, knowing that trust must be earned, not demanded. Slowly, through kindness, patience, and shared labor, she began to open up, not with words but with actions. She would smile when he offered food, follow him willingly when he needed help, and even laugh softly at moments of humor. Each gesture built a stronger connection, though neither fully realized how deep it was becoming. One evening, as the sun set behind the distant cliffs, painting the sky with streaks of orange and pink, Thomas and Naya sat outside together. The air was cooler now and the desert seemed calm. Thomas offered her some bread and she accepted with a shy smile. For the first time there was a sense of peace between them, a pause from fear, loneliness, and uncertainty. In that quiet moment, Thomas realized that this chance meeting had changed his life. The desert, once empty and silent, now held a presence that brought warmth and hope. Naya was no longer just a stranger. She was becoming a part of his world and he was becoming a part of hers. Though neither spoke much, their bond was growing stronger. Thomas knew that keeping her safe was no longer just a matter of survival. It was a matter of care and respect. And Naya, though still cautious, was beginning to trust him in ways that spoke louder than words. Together they faced the harsh desert, the isolation of the ranch, and the challenges of everyday life. Each day was a test, but it was also a step towards something neither had expected, a connection that could last a lifetime. By the end of the first part of their story, Thomas and Naya had found something rare in the desert: companionship born out of chance, understanding, and mutual respect. The loneliness that had defined Thomas's life was slowly giving way to a quiet joy. And Naya, who had fled hardship and uncertainty, had found a place where she could rest, heal, and begin to belong. The future was still unknown, but for now, they had each other, and that was enough to survive another day in the vast, unforgiving desert. The desert had a quiet rhythm that only those who lived there closely could feel. Thomas and Naya had settled into a daily life together, where work and routine became the threads that connected them. Each morning, Thomas would rise early to check the cattle while Naya prepared breakfast. The sun rose slowly over the horizon, casting a golden glow across the ranch. Their days were long and often hard, but with every shared chore, their bond grew stronger. They did not need many words to understand each other anymore. Small gestures and glances spoke volumes. Naya had become more confident in the ranch work. She learned how to feed the animals properly, how to repair broken fences, and even how to handle the horses with careful patience. Thomas watched her with quiet pride, noticing the way she moved with careful strength, how her hands, though small, were capable and steady. He realized that she was not only surviving but thriving in the desert, adapting to a life she had never known. The changes were subtle but powerful, and he admired her resilience. In turn, Naya began to rely on Thomas in ways she had never trusted anyone before. She had learned that he was steady, dependable, and kind. She could trust him to keep her safe, to provide for her needs, and to respect her choices. Their lives were not without challenges. Sometimes, travelers or neighbors would pass by the ranch and question why a young woman was living with Thomas. Some were curious, others suspicious. Their presence drew whispered comments and sideways glances, but Thomas never let the opinions of strangers affect them. He spoke calmly when asked, explaining simply that she was a guest, a friend, and that she was safe with him. Naya, on her part, remained cautious, but she also began to understand that this small desert home was her sanctuary. She was learning that the outside world might judge or misunderstand, but inside these walls, she had protection and respect. As the months passed, their relationship deepened. Simple moments became significant. Thomas noticed how she would smile when he brought water or when the sun cast long shadows across the sand. Naya observed how he worked tirelessly, even when tired, and how he cared for the smallest details on the ranch. Words were still limited between them, but the trust and affection grew in ways that needed no translation. They shared meals in silence, laughed at minor accidents, and comforted each other during quiet moments of exhaustion. The desert, once a place of isolation, now felt alive with their presence. One evening, as the sky turned shades of pink and orange, Thomas and Naya sat by a small fire. He handed her a piece of bread, and she accepted it with a gentle nod, a smile curling on her lips. For the first time, Thomas felt a sense of completeness. He realized that the loneliness he had known for so long was fading, replaced by a feeling of companionship he had never thought possible. Naya, looking at the dancing flames, felt a warmth she had not known for years. The fire was more than just heat. It was a symbol of home, safety, and connection. They also faced moments of danger and difficulty. Once, a severe sandstorm swept across the desert, forcing them to work together to secure the animals and protect the cabin. The wind howled, and sand filled every corner, but their cooperation and trust saw them through the night. In these moments, they realized how much they had come to depend on each other. Naya's instincts and Thomas's experience complemented each other perfectly. They discovered that together, they could face hardships that would have been impossible alone. Through these shared experiences, Thomas and Naya began to share stories of their past. Words were slow and limited, but gestures, drawings in the sand, and repeated phrases helped them communicate memories and experiences. Thomas told her about his childhood on the ranch, the family he had lost, and the solitude he had endured. Naya shared fragments of her life as an Apache, the hardships she had faced, and the reasons she had fled into the desert. Each story was a thread, weaving their lives together more tightly. They understood each other in ways that went beyond language, forming a connection built on empathy, respect, and shared survival. Time passed and the seasons changed. Spring brought new life to the desert, and with it, a sense of renewal in their lives. Naya began to tend a small garden near the cabin, planting vegetables and herbs with careful attention. Thomas helped her, and together they watched their garden grow, a small symbol of their joint effort and hope. Their routine was steady, but there was a quiet joy in the work they shared, in the laughter that came from small successes, and in the comfort of knowing they could rely on each other. One day, Thomas found Naya sitting quietly by the edge of the desert, staring at the horizon. He sat beside her, respecting her silence. After a while, she leaned slightly against him, a gesture of trust and connection. Thomas realized that their bond had become unspoken yet powerful. They did not need to say everything. Their presence alone spoke of commitment, safety, and belonging. Naya was no longer just a guest or a helper. She was part of the ranch, part of his life, and part of him. And Thomas, for the first time in decades, felt a sense of family he had never known. As the years went on, their lives became fully intertwined. Naya learned more of Thomas's ways, and he learned about her traditions. They shared meals, celebrated small victories, and faced challenges together. The desert, once harsh and lonely, became a place of life, warmth, and companionship. Their connection grew into a partnership of equals, built on trust, respect, and understanding. They discovered that love and friendship could emerge in the most unexpected places, and that shared hardships could strengthen bonds more than any words ever could. Eventually, Thomas and Naya made a quiet, unspoken commitment to each other. She would stay, not out of obligation, but because the ranch had become her home and he had become her family. He, in turn, accepted her fully, valuing her spirit, strength, and wisdom. Together, they transformed the ranch from a place of solitude into a place of life and connection. The animals thrived, the garden flourished, and the cabin, once a lonely shelter, became a true home. In their shared life, there were no grand gestures, no dramatic announcements, but every day held meaning. Each chore completed together, each meal shared, each quiet evening under the stars was a testament to their bond. Naya's laughter became part of the rhythm of the ranch, and Thomas's steady presence became her anchor. They had built a life together, not out of necessity but out of choice, trust, and love. And in that choice, they found fulfillment, companionship, and a sense of purpose that neither had known alone. Looking back, Thomas often thought about the day he found Naya in the desert. What had seemed like a random encounter had become the defining moment of his life. The loneliness that had haunted him for years was replaced by warmth and connection. And Naya, who had fled hardship and fear, had found safety, respect, and belonging. Their story was not one of dramatic events or extraordinary adventures, but of quiet endurance, mutual trust, and a love that grew naturally from shared life and understanding. In the end, the desert, once empty and unforgiving, had become a place of life, companionship, and hope. Thomas and Naya had found in each other a family, a home, and a partnership that would last a lifetime. Their bond, forged in adversity and nurtured in daily life, became stronger with each passing day. And as the sun set over the desert hills, painting the sky with golden light, they knew that they had found something rare and precious, each other. From that day forward, Thomas and Naya would face life together, side by side forever.